I was halfway through carving the ham when my daughter's husband leaned back in his chair, smirk tugging at his mouth, and said loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Guess the old man couldn't afford much else this Christmas." The laughter that followed stung sharper than the carving knife in my hand. It rolled around the table, bouncing off the twinkling lights and the fake pine garland my granddaughter had helped me hang that afternoon, wrapping the room in something colder than December air. Their voices carried a cruelty I had heard before, but never so plainly. I set the knife down and let my eyes rest on the ham, its glaze shining under the dining room light bought on sale 2 days earlier. The mashed potatoes were in my mother's chipped porcelain bowl, the one she had passed down before she died. The table itself was scarred oak older than my children, polished by my hands more times than I could count. To me, it was enough. To them, apparently, it was material for mockery. I'm 72 years old, widowed 10 winters now. My name is John Carter, retired maintenance man from the county schools, the sort of job no one remembers until the heat goes out or the roof leaks. My wife Evelyn kept the books at a small bank branch before her cancer claimed her. She left me with her patience and her sharp eye for numbers, and she left me with more than the children ever realized. But sitting there at that table under the glow of the string lights, they didn't see any of it. They saw an old man with thrift store sweaters and hands worn from years of tightening bolts and unclogging drains. The dining room smelled of cinnamon candles, ham fat, and baked rolls. Outside, snow pressed against the window glass, muting the world in white. Inside, the world was loud with judgment. My daughter Lisa leaned in close to her husband, whispering something that made him chuckle again. My son Michael poured himself more wine, avoiding my eyes, pretending not to notice the ridicule. My youngest Claire checked her phone under the tablecloth, bored with the whole scene. "Dad," Lisa finally said, her voice sugar-coated and sharp beneath, "you should have let us host this year. We could have had a bigger spread. You don't need to wear yourself thin." Her husband's laugh bubbled again, unchecked. I heard my granddaughter shifting in her chair, her fork clattering against the plate. She was 10 old enough to understand cruelty when she heard it. She glanced at me with wide eyes, but I pressed a small smile in her direction. Children shouldn't have to carry the weight of adult venom. I thought of Evelyn then, how she loved Christmas. She would have filled the table with gingerbread pecan pies, sugared cranberries, even if we had to stretch a paycheck thin. She believed in making a home look abundant, not because we were rich, but because love deserved its display. I tried to honor her memory that way, even if my spread was smaller, now my energy thinner. "Don't worry, Dad. Michael said his words slurred with drink someday when I retire. I'll know what it's like to scrape by. Maybe I'll borrow your recipe for potatoes." The table laughed again. A knot rose in my chest. It wasn't the jokes about money that hurt the most, but the ingratitude. They forgot the Christmases I had worked double shifts so they could have bicycles under the tree, the mortgages I helped cover when jobs were lost, the tuition checks I wrote when community college seemed out of reach. All forgotten in the shine of their own comfort. I looked around the room at the ornaments on the tree, each one tied to a year of our lives. There was the ceramic angel Evelyn had painted in '78, the popsicle stick star Michael made in kindergarten, the glass bell Lisa brought back from a trip to Chicago. They were tokens of years when family meant warmth, not ridicule. The laughter tapered off as the silence stretched from my end of the table. I lifted my glass water instead of wine and studied the reflections in its clear surface. My hands were steady. My heart was not. "I'm glad you all could make it," I said finally, my voice lower than I intended. This house still remembers Christmas, even if some of you have forgotten what it means. Lisa shifted in her seat. Michael coughed into his napkin. Claire looked up from her phone, uneasy for the first time all night. I saw their eyes dodge mine, saw guilt flicker quick and faint. But pride, arrogance, and the certainty of their own comfort kept them still. What they did not know, what none of them had ever thought to ask, was what rested behind the locked door at the far end of the hallway. The old safe Evelyn and I had bought from a pawn shop 30 years ago, its steel heavy and unyielding, its dial worn smooth from years of use. It was not what I put on the table that defined me, nor the clothes I wore. It was what I had kept safe in silence while the world assumed I had nothing. As I listened to their laughter creep back into the room, I let my eyes settle on that hallway door. Tonight would not pass as they imagined. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The laughter trickled back into the dining room, not as loud as before, but enough to gnaw at me. It felt like a draft slipping through an old window, thin but persistent, chilling everything it touched. I kept my hands folded on the table, my eyes steady, though inside I was replaying each word like a scratch in a record that would not let go. I had been laughed at plenty of times in life, but never in my own house, never at my own table on Christmas night. The house itself seemed to lean in around me. The yellowed wallpaper in the dining room had been Evelyn's choice, floral and dated, but it gave off a warmth that had outlived her. The wood floor creaked under every movement as if it remembered too much. The clock above the mantel ticked heavy each second, reminding me I was growing older, each tick, reminding me the faces around the table had grown sharper and more distant from what they once were. I thought about Evelyn's hands. She used to place them over mine when I gripped a wrench too hard, steadying me. She was practical, but she believed in dignity above all else. Never let them mistake your quiet for weakness, she used to say. She kept her voice soft, but her eyes carried steel. Sitting there, I heard her again whispering through memory, and I realized that what hurt most was not their laughter at me, but their forgetting her. I looked at Michael, his shoulders broad, his tie loosened, even though I had never once worn one in my life outside funerals. He worked in insurance, now proud of his salary, though he spent it faster than it came. I looked at Lisa, always polished, always quick to spot the flaws of others. She married a man who thought success meant stepping on those who worked harder with their hands. Claire was still young, but already her eyes flickered with the same hunger for approval that had cost her siblings their gratitude. I had given them all pieces of myself. Long nights fixing broken cars in the freezing driveway, double shifts so there would be gifts under the tree. Quiet sacrifices Evelyn and I had never spoken of because love did not require advertisement. Now, sitting across from them, I realized they had rewritten the story in their minds. They saw a poor old man clinging to scraps, not the one who had carried them through storms. The sound of my granddaughter's fork scraping her plate drew me back. She avoided looking at her mother, her lips pressed tight. Children know when something is wrong. They feel it in the air before they can put it into words. She caught my eye again, and I gave her another small smile, though my jaw ached from holding it. She did not need to inherit the bitterness of her parents. The safe at the end of the hallway seemed louder in my mind now. 30 years ago, Evelyn and I had pushed it into place, our laughter echoing through the house as we cursed its weight. She said it would be our anchor, the box that held proof we had mattered, that the years we spent sweating and saving would not dissolve into dust. I had never opened it in front of the children. I had never told them exactly what was inside. The truth was that Evelyn had left me more than memories. Her careful hand with numbers had built something lasting. While they spent their lives rushing from one purchase to the next, she had layered foundation upon foundation, a trust that carried her name hidden in plain sight. I sipped from my glass again, though the water tasted of nothing. My eyes drifted toward the hallway door, the one painted white with a brass knob dulled by time. No one else noticed where I was looking. Their laughter was thinning awkward, as if they sensed a shift they couldn't name. "Dad, you should eat," Lisa said, forcing cheer back into her voice, pushing the platter of rolls closer as if bread could cover her barbs. I pushed the platter back gently, my eyes still on hers. "I will," I said. But not yet. Her brow furrowed, uncertain. Michael poured another drink, the red wine, spilling slightly over his glass, staining the white cloth in a small, spreading circle. He cursed under his breath, and Lisa clicked her tongue, annoyed. The table turned to fuss over the mess, but I stayed still, my hands folded again, listening to the clock tick louder and louder on the mantel. My granddaughter slipped her small hand into mine under the table. Her fingers were cold, her grip tentative, but it steadied me more than any glass of whiskey could have. I looked down at her and saw Evelyn's eyes staring back at me, a quiet strength unspoken, but firm. The voices at the table blurred into the background as the thought sharpened inside me. I had been content to let them think what they wanted, to let them measure me by sweaters and potatoes. But tonight, with their laughter still ringing in my ears, I felt Evelyn's voice stronger than ever. Dignity was not a word you said out loud. It was something you showed even if your own children had to be reminded of it in the harshest way. I rose from my chair, slowly steadying myself with the edge of the oak table. The room quieted forks, pausing eyes turning. "Where are you going, Dad?" Michael asked, his tone carrying more irritation than concern. I let my gaze travel across their faces one by one before settling on the hallway door. The silence stretched long enough for them to grow uneasy. "To show you something," I said. My voice did not rise, but it carried weight. "Something I should have shown you long ago." My granddaughter's hand tightened around mine as I stepped back from the table, her chair scraping against the floor as she stood with me. The clock ticked louder. The snow pressed harder against the windows. Their laughter had stopped entirely, now leaving only the sound of my footsteps as I turned towards the hallway. Each step measured each step, pulling me closer to the steel door they had forgotten existed. Behind me I heard Lisa whisper, sharp and nervous, "What is he doing?" I didn't answer. My hand reached for the brass knob and the house seemed to hold its breath. The brass knob felt cold in my palm, colder than it should have been, as if the house itself knew this moment had waited too long. I twisted it slowly, the hinges sighing open, and the hallway stretched before me, narrow and dim, lined with faded family photos that seemed to watch my every step. I could hear the shuffle of chairs behind me, the clatter of silverware abandoned, and the faint scuff of shoes as curiosity pulled them up from the table. My granddaughter followed close, her breath quick at my side. The others hesitated, caught between mockery and unease, but I could feel their eyes pressing against my back. The air was thick, as if even the walls leaned in to listen. "Dad!" Lisa's voice rang sharp. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. The rug under my feet was worn from decades of pacing, carrying Evelyn's slippers, and my boots carrying babies in my arms, carrying silence after she was gone. At the end of that rug stood the door, white paint chipped at the corners, the safe waiting just beyond. When I reached it, I bent slightly, pushing the door open to reveal the steel bulk set into the wall. It looked like any other old relic, its black paint dulled its dial numbers worn smooth. I placed my hand on it, feeling its weight through the years, feeling Evelyn's presence in the cold metal. Behind me, Michael let out a short laugh, uneasy and brittle. "You're not serious, are you? What's in there?" "Dad old tools, war medals, or maybe Lisa's husband added, chuckling, a stack of old bills he never paid." Their words stung not for what they said, but for what they revealed. They had already measured me in their minds, reduced me to scraps and debts, convinced themselves there was nothing of worth hidden in the life that had carried them. My fingers found the dial, turning it with practiced care. The clicks echoed down the hallway, each one louder than the last, each one pulling me further from the boy they laughed at, and closer to the man Evelyn had asked me to remain. The safe didn't open yet. Not yet. Instead, the memories surged. I remembered the Christmas when Michael was 12, crying because the neighbor boy had a new bike and he didn't. I had worked an extra month's worth of overtime to surprise him with one in January red paint, still gleaming his smile wide enough to make me forget the exhaustion. He never mentioned that bike tonight. I remembered Lisa's first apartment, the rent overdue, her voice shaking on the phone. I had driven 2 towns over slipped cash into her hand and told her not to worry. She had thanked me once, then forgotten the weight of that envelope. I remembered Claire's college tuition, how the forms piled high, how Evelyn sat late at the kitchen table balancing figures, whispering, "We can make it work." We had made it work. Claire had graduated, her gown bright against the spring sky. She never asked how we had done it. All of it lived behind their laughter, now each sacrifice turned invisible under the shine of their present comforts. "Dad, this is ridiculous," Lisa said sharply, heels clicking against the floor as she followed closer. "Why are you dragging this out? We were eating dinner. Because I said turning to face them, you seem to have forgotten what this house is built on. You sit at my table eating food from my hands, mocking the man who gave you more than you ever knew. You want to measure me by a ham and some potatoes. Maybe it's time I measure you." The hallway fell silent, except for the clock's muffled ticking in the other room. Lisa's face hardened. Michael shifted uncomfortably, and Claire lingered near the doorway, her phone still in hand, though she had stopped scrolling. "Don't start this," Dad Michael muttered, though his voice carried less strength than before. "We're just joking around. No need to get dramatic." "Joking," I repeated the word heavy in my mouth. "Is that what you call it? You've forgotten that every joke cuts, and every cut leaves a scar." My granddaughter squeezed my hand tighter, her small frame pressed close against my side. Her silence was louder than all of theirs. I bent back toward the safe, my hand steady on the dial again. They leaned in curiosity, fighting with disbelief. I could almost taste their hunger in the air, a hunger not for understanding but for possession, for what they thought they deserved. That was the true cruelty of it all, the assumption that my life was theirs to mock, and whatever I had left was theirs to claim. The dial gave a final click sharper than the rest, and I pulled the handle. The heavy door groaned, the sound echoing like thunder through the narrow hall. Their breaths caught. Even Lisa's husband, smirking only moments ago, fell silent. Inside, the first thing visible was not money or papers, but a small wooden box, polished though worn at the edges. Evelyn's jewelry box. She had filled it with letters and tokens from the years we built our life together. I lifted it out and set it carefully on the rug. Behind it, stacked neatly, were folders thick with documents, each one marked with Evelyn's handwriting. On top of the pile lay a folder labeled in her careful script, Account 0041222 Trust. Michael's face shifted eyes, narrowing recognition dawning. Lisa took a step forward before catching herself, as if afraid of being too eager. Claire finally lowered her phone, both hands at her sides. "You kept this from us," Lisa's husband blurted out, his voice sharper now, suspicion layered under greed. I turned my head slowly, looking at each of them in turn. "I didn't keep it from you. You never asked. You only assumed." The silence stretched heavy, and I let it sit. The hallway light flickered once, humming faintly, as if the house itself waited to see what would come next. I reached into the safe again, fingers brushing past the folders, and pulled out a single sealed envelope, its edges yellowed with time. I had written on it years ago in my own hand, a name scrawled across the front. It wasn't one of theirs. As I held it up, the room seemed to tilt, their eyes locking on it, their confusion plain. Lisa finally spoke, her voice low and uneven. "Whose name is that?" I met her eyes, steady, unblinking. "Not yours." The envelope trembled slightly in my hand, not from weakness, but from the weight of their eyes fixed on it. The hallway seemed narrower now, the air dense with suspicion. Lisa's husband broke first, his voice sharper than before. "So who gets that, huh? Some secret name we've never heard of. You keeping someone else on the side, old man." The jab sliced through me, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I let the words hang, knowing silence could cut sharper than any reply. Lisa's eyes darted to the envelope, then back to me, her suspicion spilling into anger. "Is this why you've been hiding things all these years? All that time you claimed there was nothing left but your pension. You were sitting on accounts and passing out envelopes to strangers." Michael stepped closer. His face flushed the wine on his breath, reaching me before his words did. "We're your children, Dad. If there's money, if there's property, if there's anything, why would you keep it from us? Why wouldn't you trust your own family?" I turned the envelope over once in my hand, the paper whispering with the motion. My granddaughter's grip tightened around my arm, her voice barely a whisper. "Grandpa?" She didn't ask for explanations. She asked only for reassurance. The tension around us thickened like smoke, suffocating. Every glance from my children carried not love, but hunger, as though this revelation was not about dignity or history, but about what might be theirs. It was Evelyn's greatest fear that the things she had built with quiet discipline would someday rot the hearts of the very people she built them for. I remembered Evelyn's voice the night she drafted the trust papers. She had sat at the dining room table, spectacles low on her nose, saying, "It's not about who gets what, John. It's about making sure respect isn't lost when I'm gone." She had smiled, then tired, but resolute. "Because nothing kills a family quicker than greed." Lisa jabbed a finger toward the safe. "You think this is fair, keeping it locked away? You let us scrape and struggle while you sat here guarding some secret fortune. You let me borrow money for rent, and this was here the whole time." Her words were fire, and Michael threw gasoline on it. "She's right. I took extra shifts, broke my back to pay off a mortgage, and you're telling me you had a trust account sitting under lock and key. You could have helped. You should have helped." I felt the heat of their accusations, each one rewriting years of my life. They spoke as if my sacrifices had never existed, as if the money they imagined inside the safe had been hoarded out of spite. I looked at them, seeing not my children, but strangers who measured love in dollar signs and respect in account balances. Claire finally stepped into the hall, her voice thinner than the others, but no less sharp. "Is that why Mom died early, Dad? Because you held on to money instead of getting her better treatment?" Her words struck harder than all the rest. My knees weakened, but I steadied myself against the safe. Evelyn had refused the costly experimental treatments, saying she wouldn't leave me drowning in debt. She had chosen dignity over desperation, and I had honored her choice, though it had broken me. To hear my own daughter twist it into an accusation cut deep enough to make my breath falter. "Don't you dare!" I said, my voice low but trembling with fury. "Don't you dare use your mother's death to justify your greed!" The hallway went silent again, the air crackling. They stared at me, but none looked ashamed. Instead, I saw calculation, their eyes fixed once more on the folders stacked in the safe. Michael reached a hand toward the pile, bold in his drunkenness. "If you won't explain it, maybe we'll just look for ourselves." I slammed the safe door with a force that echoed through the house. His hand jerked back, startled, and the hallway shook with the vibration. My granddaughter gasped, clinging tighter to me. "This isn't yours to take," I said, my voice steel now. "Not one page, not one coin, not one memory. You think you've suffered. You think I've sat here fat on secrets while you scraped by. Every scar on these hands paid for your comfort. Every sleepless night, every dollar saved, every piece of bread on your plate came through this house. And you sit here daring to laugh at me, daring to accuse me." They stood frozen, my words pressing them back, but the hunger in their eyes did not fade. It only deepened. Lisa's husband finally sneered, breaking the silence once more. "Then why keep the envelope? Why not tear it up right here unless you know we deserve to see it?" I turned the envelope slowly, holding it high enough for all of them to see. Their eyes tracked it, every gaze locked like predators watching prey. The name scrawled across it gleamed faintly in the hallway light. And then I tore the flap open. The sound was louder than thunder in that moment, a ripping that silenced them all. I slipped 2 fingers inside and drew out a single photograph, its edges worn, its colors faded. Not Evelyn, not the children. The face staring back was a man they had never seen, a man in uniform, his hand resting on my shoulder in a younger photograph. The handwriting on the back carried only one line. "For John, in case they forget who you are." I looked up slowly, holding the photo where they could see it, but not touch. Their faces paled with confusion. My granddaughter whispered again. "Grandpa, who is he?" The house held its breath. I said nothing. The photograph shook in my hand, though not from weakness alone. It was the tremor of old wounds torn open in front of eyes that no longer felt like family. The man in the picture, his arm braced around my shoulder, his uniform stiff with creases, was a ghost they had never met. His smile was sharp. His jaw set his gaze steady. He had stood by me once when no one else did. Michael squinted at the photograph, leaning forward, wine glass dangling carelessly in his fingers. "Who the hell is that?" Lisa crossed her arms, her tone cutting. "Is this supposed to be another secret? Another reminder of how little you ever shared with us? We were your children. Dad, why do we have to learn about your life from scraps of paper in a safe?" Her husband muttered, "Looks like some soldier. What did you have a buddy leaving you money?" His smirk lingered, but there was unease under it, as though he knew he had stepped into something larger than he could mock away. I stared at the photo, unable to pull my eyes from it. The past rushed back, vivid as yesterday. The clang of boots on gravel, the smell of diesel and sweat, the desert heat pressing down. His name was Daniel, my brother, not by blood, but by bond. A man who had saved me more than once in a place that chewed young men up and spat them out broken. He was gone now, years gone, buried in a small cemetery with too few mourners. But before he left, he gave me that photograph, his handwriting on the back, for John, in case they forget who you are. And here I was, standing in my own hallway, my children staring at me as if I were a stranger, mocking the very life that had carried them. Daniel had known this moment would come. Somehow he had known. My knees felt weak. I leaned heavier against the safe, my breath uneven. Evelyn's face appeared in my mind, her eyes soft, her hand smoothing my shoulder as she had so many nights after nightmares pulled me from sleep. She had known my battles, even if the children never did. She had whispered to me, "You came back whole, John. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Now the people questioning me were my own flesh and blood. Michael stepped closer, his tone impatient. Enough with the silent act. "Is he the reason you've been hiding money? Did this guy give you something? Some payout? Are we finally getting the truth?" "Dad," the word payout scraped against me like broken glass, as if friendship could be measured in dollars, as if Daniel's sacrifice could be reduced to a transaction. "You don't know what you're asking?" I said, my voice thick heavy with years unsaid. Lisa's eyes narrowed her lips a tight line. "Then tell us. Stop holding everything back. We grew up in this house never knowing what was real. You kept secrets like they were treasures, and all we got were stories about fixing boilers and cleaning schools." Her words snapped something inside me. My chest tightened, my throat burned. "Stories," I said, my voice rising for the first time all night. "Those stories kept you warm. Those stories put shoes on your feet and food in your mouths. Every boiler I fixed, every classroom I patched, every pipe I soldered, those stories built this roof over your heads. And now you laugh at them. You laugh at me." My granddaughter pressed closer, her small body shaking. Her whisper reached only me. "Grandpa, don't cry." I hadn't realized tears had gathered in my eyes until her words broke me further. I blinked, and they fell streaking down my face, hot and humiliating under the gaze of children who no longer remembered love without judgment. The hallway blurred with memory. I saw Evelyn holding Lisa's hand on her first day of school. Saw Michael grinning with missing teeth as he rode that red bike. Saw Claire asleep on the couch after finals, her textbooks still open. I had carried them all every step, every stumble. And now they stood in front of me, blind to the sacrifices buried under their comfort. Lisa's husband exhaled sharply, breaking the fragile silence. "Crying isn't going to change the fact that you lied. You could have trusted them, told them. Instead, you hid. Makes a man wonder what else you've been hiding." The cruelty of it landed harder than he knew, because I had been hiding something. Something Evelyn and I had sworn to keep quiet. Something locked away not for shame, but for protection. And now, with the safe open and their eyes burning into me, I felt it pressing closer to the surface. Michael stepped nearer to the safe again, his hand twitching like he might reach for the folders despite my warning. "If you won't say it, we'll find out ourselves." I pushed the photograph back into the envelope and slid it under my arm. My other hand shot out, slamming the safe door shut again. The metallic clang reverberated like a gunshot through the house, making them all flinch. "This is not yours," I said, my voice shaking with fury and grief all at once. "Not now, not ever." The words left me trembling. For a moment, the weight of it all nearly buckled me, as though the years, the sacrifices, the hidden truths had finally crushed down too heavy. My breath came ragged, my chest tight, my vision narrowing. I gripped the safe for balance, the steel cool under my palm, and felt the collapse threatening to pull me under. Then my granddaughter's voice pierced it again, steadier this time. "Grandpa, what's in there?" Her question was pure, untainted by greed, and it steadied me. I straightened my knees, aching but locked firm, and looked at her instead of the others. Her eyes were wide, waiting not for riches but for truth, And in that moment I knew the truth would cut deeper than any account balance ever could. I reached into the safe again, ignoring the gasps behind me, and pulled free one of the folders. The cover bore Evelyn's handwriting in its careful script. But this one did not read trust. It read adoption papers. The folder was heavier than paper had any right to be. My hand trembled only for a second before I steadied it, opening the worn cover so the words inside faced me. The black ink faded from time confirmed what Evelyn and I had once sworn to guard in silence. Adoption papers. The air in the hallway thickened, every breath pulled tight, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Michael lurched forward, his voice sharp. "What is that supposed to mean, adoption papers for who?" Lisa's lips parted, her polished composure slipping. "You lied to us. Our whole lives you lied." Their words came quick, frantic, as though the pages had cracked their foundations. I could hear the edge of desperation rising not from love, but from fear that their claims on me, on my life, on my safe, might not be as secure as they once believed. I closed the folder slowly, pressing it against my chest. My heart still raced from the collapse moments earlier, but the storm inside me was shifting. The weight of tears had drained something out, and in its place came a harder clarity. My breathing steadied my spine, straightened, and I felt Evelyn beside me again, her whisper like steel in my ear. "Do not let them take your dignity, John. Stand." I wiped my face with the back of my hand and looked at them. Really looked. Their anger, their suspicion, their hunger. They had come not from my absence, but from my presence. The presence of a father they believed would always bend. Tonight, for the first time, I felt the bend straighten into something unyielding. "Who?" Michael demanded again, his face red, his hands balled into fists at his sides. "You want to know." My voice came steady, now measured. "You think you're ready for what truth costs. You think truth is a coin you can flip into your pockets." Lisa stepped forward, eyes flashing. "Don't talk in riddles, just tell us." Their voices piled against me like a tide, but I no longer felt myself drowning. I felt myself rise. I thought of Daniel again, his photograph still tucked inside the envelope under my arm. Daniel, who had stood shoulder to shoulder with me when I had nothing but a rifle and grit. Daniel, who had trusted me with his last wishes. And Evelyn, who had pressed her hand over mine when we signed the papers, whispering, "We will raise them as our own. They will never need to know unless one day it becomes the only way." That day had come. My gaze shifted to my granddaughter, the only one whose eyes carried no greed. She looked at me wide-eyed, innocent of the poison spilling from the others. Her small hand still clung to my sleeve, her loyalty quiet, but unbreakable. In her face I saw what Evelyn and I had fought for, the chance to give someone love without condition. I pressed the folder closed tighter, the papers crinkling within. My resolve hardened. They had mocked me, accused me, thrown Evelyn's memory back in my face. But I would not let them strip me bare without showing them what lay underneath, what truths they had never once considered. "You want the truth?" I said, my voice low but strong. "Then you'll have it." The silence that followed was heavy, brittle as glass. Their eyes locked on me, waiting for me to stumble, to falter. But I did not. I placed the folder back into the safe deliberately, my hand firm. The clang of it settling echoed through the hallway like the sound of chains unfastening. Then I turned the dial once, twice, sealing it shut again. They erupted. Michael shouted. First, his voice breaking. "You can't just put it away. We deserve to know we have the right." Lisa's voice followed, shrill and hot. "You've hidden everything. This isn't about dignity. It's about control. You never trusted us, not once." Claire stood frozen, her phone still at her side, her face pale. For the first time, her eyes seemed uncertain, flicking between me and her siblings, as though the ground beneath her feet had shifted. I let their voices pound against me like waves against rock. And then when they had shouted themselves hoarse, I raised my hand palm outward, and the silence returned. "You speak of rights," I said quietly. "But where were those rights when you laughed at me in my own house? Where were those rights when you turned your mother's death into a weapon? You claim me when it serves you, and you deny me when it doesn't. That is not family. That is hunger." The words hung there sharp and final. They recoiled, but their eyes still burned. The storm inside them had not ended. If anything, it was only beginning. I turned away, guiding my granddaughter back toward the dining room. My legs were tired, my chest still sore, but each step carried new weight, a new plan forming with each heartbeat. The time for silence had ended. As we reached the threshold, Lisa hissed from behind me. "If you think you can keep us out of this, you're wrong. We'll find out. We'll dig until we do." I stopped, my hand resting on the doorframe, my back to them. For a long moment I said nothing. Then without turning, I spoke. "Be careful what you dig for. Some truths don't belong to you." The room held still, the tree lights blinking steady, the ham cooling on the table, the laughter long gone. My granddaughter pressed closer, her eyes still fixed on me, waiting. And then, just as I was about to guide her back to her chair, a sound came from the hallway behind us. A metallic click. I turned in time to see Michael, his hand already twisting the safe's dial, his face set with determination and fury. Michael's fingers spun the dial with clumsy confidence. His jaw set his breath ragged. The sound of the tumblers clicking rattled through the hallway, sharp and wrong, like a knife scraping bone. My chest tightened, not from fear of what he might find, but from the violence of the act itself. It wasn't just a safe he was trying to force open. It was the final boundary between what I had given and what I had held back. "Stop," I said, my voice flat heavy with command. He didn't stop. He glanced up only once, his eyes flashing with drunken defiance. "No more secrets, Dad. Not tonight." Lisa stepped in closer, her hands gripping her husband's arm as though to steady him. Her eyes glowed with something sharp, a hunger she didn't even try to hide anymore. Claire lingered behind, pale and trembling, her phone clutched tight, but forgotten in her hand. The dial scraped under Michael's twisting hand. My granddaughter gasped beside me, her small voice pleading. "Grandpa, make him stop." I stepped forward, each pace deliberate, my boots heavy against the floorboards. Memories surged with every step, the nights I had worked my hands raw, so Michael could eat the mornings I had driven him to school, when the bus broke down, the countless hours I had watched from the bleachers as he played ball, cheering louder than anyone. All of that now crushed beneath his fingers, clawing at the lock. When I reached him, I placed my hand over his on the dial. The heat of his skin burned against mine. He tried to yank free, but my grip was stronger, steadier, forged by years of labor he had long forgotten. "This safe," I said, my eyes locked on his, "is not your birthright. It is not your prize. It is the line between who you think I am and who I really am. And if you cross it without me, you will lose more than you know." For the first time, I saw a flicker of hesitation in him. His breath caught his eyes, darted to the envelope still tucked under my arm, and for just a heartbeat, his confidence faltered. Then Lisa's voice cut through, high and sharp. "Don't let him scare you, Michael. He's just an old man clinging to control. Open it." Her words poured gasoline over the fire. Michael snarled, jerking his hand harder, twisting the dial beneath my palm. The metal shrieked in protest, and then with a calmness that surprised even me, I let go. Michael stumbled forward, unbalanced by the sudden release. His hand slammed against the dial, spinning it wildly past the mark. The tumblers clattered inside with a hollow echo, locked tighter now than before. He cursed, slamming his fist against the door. The sound echoed like a gunshot, shaking the picture frames on the wall. I reached past him, grabbed the heavy steel handle, and pulled it shut with one violent motion. The clang reverberated through the house. Then, before any of them could react, I turned the dial back to 0 and slipped the small brass key from my pocket into the lock, clicking it home. Their faces froze. They hadn't known there was a second lock. Michael's mouth opened, words stuck in his throat. Lisa's eyes widened, her confidence draining. Claire gasped. Even Lisa's husband fell silent. I pocketed the key, my hand steady, my voice calm, but edged with steel. This house still belongs to me, and so does every truth inside this safe. The silence cracked when Michael's voice broke into a shout, shrill with panic. "You can't keep us out forever if you think you can just—" His words faltered. His eyes had landed on something just above the safe. The rest followed his gaze. The old picture frame on the wall. Evelyn, in her Sunday dress, her hand resting on my shoulder, had tilted during the struggle. Behind the frame, barely visible, was the corner of a hidden envelope wedged into the drywall. The air shifted. Lisa lunged, first her hand darting toward it. But I was faster. Years of practice had taught me how to move when it mattered, and I snatched the frame from the wall envelope, and all holding it against my chest. Their cries erupted in unison. "What is that?" Lisa demanded. "Another secret," Michael spat. "Give it here," Lisa's husband growled, his hand outstretched. My granddaughter clung to my leg, her voice fierce in its smallness. "It's his. Leave him alone." I looked down at the envelope in my hand. Its paper yellowed, the seal still intact after all these years. The handwriting across the front was unmistakable. Evelyn's. The sight of it nearly buckled me again, but this time I didn't collapse. This time I felt the rise, the plan that had been forming since their laughter first cut me at the table. I realized what Evelyn had left me was not just accounts or papers or memories. She had left me the means to remind them of who she was, who we were, and who they had chosen to forget. I turned back to face them, the envelope raised high. Their eyes devoured it, greedy and afraid. "You want truth?" I said, my voice low, steady, every syllable carrying the weight of decades. "Then you'll have to hear it in her words, not mine." And with that, I slid my thumb beneath the brittle seal and tore it open. The flap lifted. A folded sheet slipped out, ink faded but legible. Evelyn's handwriting sprawled across it, her voice reaching across years of silence. And the first line, which I read aloud, froze them all in place. "To my children, the truth you were never meant to laugh away." The words spilled from the page in Evelyn's hand, her voice reborn in ink. My throat tightened as I read aloud. "To my children, the truth you were never meant to laugh away. Your father and I built this house from work no one else wanted to do. We fixed the pipes that burst, we mopped the floors. No one noticed we counted every penny until it grew into something worth keeping. We did not hide it to shame you. We kept it safe so that when you forgot what dignity was, you might remember." The hallway fell silent save for the soft tremor in my voice. Their faces shifted with each line. Michael pale, Lisa's mouth slightly open, Claire's hands trembling at her sides, Evelyn's letter cut deeper still. "There are things you were never told, not because we wished to deceive you, but because truth has its own time. You were loved in ways you did not see, carried by sacrifices you never felt. But if the day comes when laughter replaces gratitude, Then this letter is my hand on your shoulder, reminding you that respect is the only inheritance that matters. The paper shook as I lowered it, the silence around me heavy enough to smother. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Michael broke it. His voice cracked, desperate. So what? You think this changes anything? You still locked everything away? You still treated us like children. His words wavered hollow against Evelyn's voice. Lisa's face flushed her fury, trying to hold steady. She wrote that years ago. She didn't know how things would turn out. We're not children anymore, Dad. We deserve what's ours. I snapped my gaze to her. What's yours? Evelyn's love was yours. My sweat was yours. Every chance you got to fail and stand again was yours. But this, I lifted the letter, this was not meant to be measured in dollars. This was meant to be measured in respect. Her composure cracked for the first time, her lips quivering before she pressed them tight. Claire spoke, then her voice, small but clear, breaking through the storm. I remember Mom used to sit with me at night and tell me stories about when she was young. She always said money didn't matter if you forgot kindness. I don't think she wanted us to be like this. Her words softened the air for a moment, but Michael threw himself forward again, his voice rising. Kindness doesn't pay the bills. Respect doesn't keep a roof over our heads. If you really cared, you would have shared it. All of it. I stepped closer to him, the letter still in my hand, my voice low but cutting. Shared it when you were mocking me in front of my granddaughter, when you used your mother's death to wound me. Respect was the only thing I ever asked. And tonight you proved you could not even give that. Michael's bravado faltered. His eyes darted to the safe, then back to me, searching for ground that no longer held. His voice dropped to a whisper. Then what are we supposed to do? Before I could answer, Lisa's husband sneered, breaking the fragile silence. I'll tell you what you're supposed to do. Stop letting this old man play you. He's holding on to accounts, trusts, God knows what else, and you're letting him wave letters around like it's gospel. If he thinks he can bury this, we can find a lawyer. We can drag this into court. His words landed like a hammer, sharp and final. The threat bared itself, not just greed, but open war. Michael's head turned toward him, hesitation flickering, but temptation close behind. Lisa's jaw set tight, her silence heavier than agreement. My granddaughter gasped, clutching my sleeve, her eyes wide. Grandpa, they can't take it, can they? I looked down at her, my chest aching, and forced a steadiness into my voice. Not what matters most. I turned back to them, letting my eyes rest on each face, lingering on the man who dared to threaten what Evelyn and I had built. You think lawyers can give you what you lack. You think signatures can replace respect. Then you've learned nothing. And if you want to drag this into the light, understand this. Evelyn left more than one letter. Their eyes widened, confusion breaking through anger. Lisa's voice came sharp. What do you mean? I reached back into the envelope, my fingers brushing another folded sheet I had not yet pulled free. The paper crackled thicker, sealed with tape yellowed by age. I held it up where they could see. Evelyn's handwriting was clear across the front, to be opened only if they forget who their father is. The color drained from Lisa's face. Michael took a step back, his bravado faltering. Claire covered her mouth, whispering. She knew this day would come. I looked down at the second letter, its seal intact, my thumb pressing lightly against it. My chest tightened, my breath heavy with the weight of what came next. And then without a word, I broke the seal. The paper slipped open in my hand. My eyes caught the first line, and the ground beneath us all seemed to tilt. I must tell you what your father never would. One of you is not his by blood. The words from Evelyn's letter cut through the air like a blade. One of you is not his by blood." The hallway fell into a silence so deep I could hear the hum of the old refrigerator from the kitchen, the faint rattle of the furnace downstairs. My children stared at me, each searching my face for answers I wasn't ready to give. Michael's lips moved first, dry and trembling. What does she mean?" Lisa took a sharp breath, her composure cracking as she reached for the wall to steady herself. Claire's eyes brimmed with tears, her phone finally slipping from her hand to the floor with a dull thud. I folded the letter gently, pressing it to my chest, and closed my eyes. Evelyn's voice filled me again, not with sorrow, but with her steady faith. She had known this moment would demand more than anger, more than defense. It would demand truth, stripped down to its bones. "You're looking for answers in the wrong places," I said, opening my eyes to meet theirs. Blood was never what made this family. It was sweat, and years, and a roof built over our heads when the world outside didn't care if we froze. It was the meals your mother stretched when money was thin, and the hands that carried you when your legs were too small to walk. That was family. Lisa's eyes flashed wet with something between rage and despair. "So which one, who isn't, who doesn't belong? Belong, I let the word echo low and heavy. Every one of you belongs. Whether blood runs through our veins or not, you were carried here, fed here, loved here. If you cannot see that, then no letter, no trust, no fortune will change it." Michael's face tightened, his bravado drained, leaving only the boy I once knew trembling after a nightmare. He whispered, "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Because I said my voice softening it never mattered. Evelyn and I promised that. We promised that love would never be measured by the accidents of blood, but by the choice to stay, to raise, to forgive. We held that promise even when you forgot what it meant. The house seemed to settle around us, the wood groaning, the furnace sighing, the old clock ticking on, as if to remind us of every second we'd wasted on cruelty. My granddaughter's hand squeezed tighter around mine, her eyes unclouded by greed, wide with something purer. I looked down at her and found the strength I had thought lost. "I'm not here to hand you money." I continued looking back at them, "and I'm not here to prove myself with papers. I'm here to remind you of what your mother feared most, that laughter at another's expense would rot the soul of this family. And tonight it nearly did." Lisa lowered her gaze. Her arms crossed tighter, but her defiance wavered. Michael turned his back for a moment, one hand pressed to his forehead, as though the truth itself had bruised him. Claire took a step toward me, her voice small, almost broken. "Dad, I don't care what the papers say. You're my father." Her words hung there, trembling in the heavy air. I saw in her the possibility that forgiveness could still bloom, even in a room littered with bitterness. I reached back, closing the safe door with one slow push, the lock clicking into place like a final word. These walls have carried too many secrets. But the one that matters most is this: dignity is not given, it is kept. And once you let it go, you'll never find it again. My eyes swept the faces of my children, searching for any glimmer of understanding. Some carried shame, some carried fury, some carried only confusion. But it no longer mattered. What mattered was that Evelyn's voice had been heard, her truth laid bare, her love declared louder than their hunger. The tree lights flickered in the other room, casting faint colors into the hall. Snow pressed harder against the windows, sealing us in together, as if demanding we face what we had become. My granddaughter leaned her head against my arm, her small voice rising once more. "Grandpa, can we go back to the table now?" I bent down, kissed the top of her head, and whispered, "Yes, we'll go back." But things won't ever be the same. As I straightened the letter still in my hand, I felt something inside me settle. Not peace exactly, but a clarity carved from years of silence finally broken. Justice was not about punishing them. It was about refusing to let their mockery erase the life Evelyn and I had built. Forgiveness, if it came, would have to be earned. I stepped toward the dining room, the letter trembling between my fingers, my shadow stretching long against the wall. Behind me, my children lingered frozen at the threshold between what they wanted and what they feared. The night was not over. The fight inside them was not finished. But for the first time in years, I felt unbroken. Thanks for listening to the story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment to let us know what you think.